Hello and welcome back to the We Need to Talk About Chocolate podcast. I'm back in the chocolate yurt with my co-host Andrew Nason on my left.
Hi, Ed.
Today we're going to be talking about something called a polyphenol, or polyphenols as they're often pluralized too. Now, those watching or listening at home may or may not have heard of that word. It sort of sounds like a scientific word, and it's often a buzzword in nutrition, particularly when talking about chocolate and why chocolate is so good for you. But I think what we've discussed, Andrew and I, is that a lot of people don't really know what that means, including people who are actually selling the stuff, right?
Yeah.
People who are selling dark chocolate and advertising it's having these polyphenols in, they don't have a clue what that means. It's just a sort of buzzword. So what we are looking to do in this episode is demystify that word, really get into what polyphenols are, find out whether the hype's worth it, how much is actually in chocolate, where else you find them, what they are, etc., etc. And yeah, Andrew and I have been researching hard for this one, and I think we've both found some pretty interesting stuff, so buckle in.
Yeah, this is a really important compound that I don't think is well understood, and a lot of the information is quite contradictory or not obvious to follow. So Ed, we're gonna crack it open.
Yeah, for sure. Like a cacao pod. We're gonna crack it open.
Yeah, exactly.
And see the delicious pulp inside.
And Ed, I thought we'd start with you being yourself.
Yay!
Once, okay. But
for those tuning in for the first time, normally I'm made to be some amoeba or other sort of single cell organism.
Amoeba or a slug were
exactly.
two of your like
but
top.
Today I'm just Ed, the
okay, so Ed, you're in a desert, okay? And the sun is beating down on you. And there is only one object in the desert, and that's a beautiful tree with those lovely green, glistening leaves. And I want to ask you, what are you going to do in the desert?
Good. I mean, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go towards the tree, and I'm going to do two things to it. I'm going to get some shade under it.
Thank you.
And I'm going to see if I can eat from it as well.
Okay, absolutely correct. And you're getting shade from it.
Yeah.
Okay, which is a really important function of a tree. But now I'm going to ask you, the question is, what if you were the tree?
You need to find a bigger tree to get under, right? No, I mean, you're stuffed. A tree can't go for a walk and find shade. A tree can't go to the supermarket and change its diet to get more stuff. It needs stuff inside it to help it deal with the burning UV rays of the desert.
Exactly right. So this is a polyphenol is the tree's answer to the fact that it can't walk on under a tree and hide in the shade.
Absolutely right.
It has to deal with that amount of stress from the sun. And the polyphenol is the chemical that protects its mitochondria. Remember, Ed, when you were an amoeba?
I do.
And this was pre the split with the plants. You ate whatever was in front of your mouth and you swallowed, well, we're going to call it, you swallowed grandma, the mitochondria.
Yes.
Right. So now you're going to split plant animal, but you have the same protective mechanism against that sun, which is the creation of polyphenols in plants.
Andrew's absolutely right. When we talk about polyphenols, we're essentially talking chemicals that are found naturally in pretty much all plants.
Correct.
And yeah, a really good example of what the kind of thing they do is protect from UV rays. That's not all though. They also help with things like infection or the production of chlorophyll. All of these things that a plant needs to do in order to survive. In the same way we have our immune system and we have blood cells and things to deal with that sort of stuff. Polyphenols are plant versions of those things. They're essentially little superheroes inside plants, or I sort of imagine them as sort of the police, the ambulance, and the fire service.
Yes.
Say they're sort of taking out foreign insects that are trying to eat the plant. That's polyphenols dealing with that. I don't know, maybe there's too much UV, so the sort of the firefighter polyphenols go and deal with that. They are remarkable things. There is not just one type. There are, in fact, over 80,000 of these things.
Ed, can you see them?
Oh, I mean, under a microscope, perhaps, but no, not with your eyes.
No, you can see them. You can see them. And let's take you now to a beautiful autumnal scene in the British countryside or in Boston, and you're
Lovely.
watching, the change of the seasons.
Sure.
And suddenly you see these beautiful reds, yellows,
Oranges.
and oranges, and their leaves. And you're seeing the polyphenols that have been hidden by the green chlorophyll, and now suddenly they're revealed. So we all know instinctively what polyphenols are, because we see them every autumn, and they're stunning, they're beautiful. And of course, when we get onto the nutritional element, we're going to be talking about eating the rainbow.
I guess you touched on that nicely. Eating, I mean, I'm sure those that haven't stumbled across polyphenols much, we're thinking, okay, these are in plants, they're in that tree in the desert, they're in, I don't know, broccoli, kale, coffee, spoiler alert, chocolate. But what does that do for me? I'm a human, I don't have those in my body. And luckily, this will help some listeners and it will not help others. Certainly didn't help Andrew when I explained it to him for our episode. But I imagine it almost like the Super Smash Brothers character, Kirby, who has the power of being able to eat other players and take on their powers. And pretty simply, that's how these things work. If you eat foods that contain polyphenols, and there is a long list of those that do, and we'll go into that in a minute, but if you eat these foods with polyphenols in, assuming you're also eating foods that help with the absorption, so certain fats, etc., you will get the benefits of those polyphenols in your body. Your body will absorb them and will take them on. And the range of ways that these chemicals, these different 80,000 polyphenols, have been shown in myriad scientific studies to help the human body, both women, men, old people, young people. The range of positive effects these things have been shown to have, I found utterly remarkable.
Yeah, it is totally incredible. And let's dig down into the science for a second a bit more.
Please. So
we get a little bit of a clarity. So we agreed that the tree can't move. And we also know that...
Well, it can't, obviously trees do move to look at the sun and things, but
they're not going to walk up and go in the shade.
Exactly, they can't.
Right.
They're stuck where they are.
So they've got to have a chemical reaction that repairs the damage from intense sunlight. And we know that the photosynthesis process itself with the mitochondria, grannies popping up everywhere, is very destructive to a tree. And so they have created these chemicals, the polyphenols, to reduce the oxidative stress, and it's called decoupling. And mitochondria decoupling, and basically what that means, Ed, and this is why it's so super relevant for the food group, is the mitochondria, in a tree and in you, particularly when you're drinking beer and eating a lot of sugar, are under extreme stress.
Yes.
They're like, you're like really giving Granny a hard ride.
And Granny is, the mitochondria as well, and what's interesting when we talked about the diversity of what these things can do is everywhere. I mean, they're in the brain, they're in the heart, they're in the organs, in the skin.
30% of the heart is a mitochondria.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
so
it's super important.
That's exactly why the range of positive effects of polyphenols is so positive. I have here a list of 9 different studies on that have been done in the last 10 years or so.
Right.
And a lot of these are all absolutely scientifically backed up studies. A lot of them are sort of using metadata, which the nerds at home will essentially is where you take a huge number of different studies and combine that data into one new study. And these are just some of the things that polyphenols have been found to help with. Andrew, can you think of any first of all?
Well, in terms of what polyphenols do.
Exactly, in the human body, when they're eaten and when they're absorbed in the correct way.
Yeah, let's first start with the decoupling of the mitochondria. What that means in the plant or in the human that consumes them is that it gives the mitochondria a break, and it lets it give off steam, and it effectively repairs your mitochondria. And that is absolutely crucial for the plant and for us. So obviously it's energy boosting. So that number one is repair of the mitochondria.
Absolutely right. And one of the key, you mentioned there earlier about how the heart is made up of 30% mitochondrial cells. There was a trial in 2022 that was then redone in 2025 to show the same data. It was called the Cosmos trial, if you want to look it up at home. It found that people that were getting a large number of polyphenols, particularly actually, interestingly, from chocolate, again, spoiler alert for later in the episode, we're not talking Mars bars here, we're not talking white chocolate milky buttons, we're talking people that are eating no sugar, 70 to 90% dark chocolate.
Yes, and let's just get it out there straight away. If you're looking for polyphenols, the king of polyphenols is dark chocolate.
Absolutely.
It is the absolute, king, god
and it's
of
nice.
Polyphenols.
So 27% fewer cardiovascular deaths amongst the group who were consuming large amounts of polyphenols, specifically mentioned in the study, chocolate. Number 2, the brain. We mentioned earlier about how the brain is so benefited by antioxidants and polyphenols. They found that actually those that were given polyphenols over an extended period of time were better at, they basically got these participants to make trails, to basically make and then solve puzzles essentially. And they found those that had polyphenols were not only able to do them faster, they were also able to do them for longer. So that's both cognitive ability and sort of cognitive strength, your ability to use your brain for longer.
Yeah, I saw a study where women were put in a driving simulator and their driving improved, which I think we can all celebrate. The fact that, driving is improved in general.
Absolutely right, absolutely right. I hope you're not implying something about female drivers there.
Absolutely not.
Many studies have shown...
It's just good to see an improvement.
All drivers, but absolutely right to mention specifically women and women's brains. In 2006, they found that young, healthy females, the actual signals that were given from the brain to the body, the speed of basically cognitive understanding and cognitive reaction to things was much faster in young women who were consuming lots of polyphenols. Moving to the other end of the spectrum, in elder people, they found that...
Well, can we just pick up on that? I've talked about chocolate being a 17th century Viagra. Polyphenols are part of the process that release nitrogen into the body.
Yeah.
And therefore is linked to fertility and, is basically exactly the same as Viagra. So chocolate, you heard it here first, is the Viagra.
Absolutely right. It doesn't end there. We've already touched on the brain. We've touched on not just the brain, but on cognitive ability, but brain repair. If you're an old person, one of the things that you really got to worry about is, unfortunately, your brain not working as well as it did 20, 30 years ago. And that's essentially because the cells in it, they get tired and they can't produce them quickly enough, and also they can't look after themselves quickly enough.
Yeah.
Guess what? Polyphenols really, really, really help that. They found in elder people who were eating lots of polyphenols, eating lots of things like dark chocolate, that actually their brain and their brain health was much better. Andrew and I, and I'm sure our listeners will know, we've spoken a lot about sugar, insulin spikes.
Yeah.
For those who will have just watched an episode that came out a few weeks ago now, where I had those 100 grams of sugar in half an hour, whatever it was, and my insulin levels went through the roof. I was unable to control it, and I felt wretched.
You were very grumpy, very bad-tempered.
Quite stupid as well.
Very stupid. I put a Snickers in front of you, and you almost revolted.
I look like I'm about to headbutt you. I was watching you back in the edit.
I was very concerned. We had to get the producer in to calm me down.
If only we'd done this episode then, because I would have known that actually, if I'd had used some polyphenols in that week, if I'd cheated and been snacking on coffee and red wine and chocolate and the things that polyphenols are in, actually, insulin control, the amount of insulin you need to use to handle sugar spikes goes down.
Yeah, this is a really important thing that I think we need to bring out in more detail is we've talked a lot about sugar and its glycemic index and the spikes. And of course, you don't want spikes because that means insulin goes out of control. It has to spike as well, and then it has a dip, and the whole body is stressed. So what we're discovering is this poly, who's phenomenal.
Yeah, phenomenal poly.
Stops the spike dead in its tracks. And I've actually had diabetics tell me that the spike disappears and is smoothed out. And we think that is the polyphenol in the cocoa butter that's doing that, is actually reducing that really quite dangerous spike in sugar.
If you are someone with diabetes, thinking about, are you eating enough polyphenols, particularly things like dark chocolate, like touched upon already, but we'll go into later the exact long list of things that have these in, but dark chocolate being one, coffee, red wine, actually, yeah, absolutely can help manage insulin spikes, obviously on top of medication and processes already. The last one I'll touch on, we spoke on it at the start. Andrew gave that beautiful analogy of the tree in the desert, and actually how does the tree stop UV kind of getting in and the difficulties from the sun. And I said I would probably shade under the tree, but I'd also eat it, and I'd be absolutely right to do so, because like the tree, if you eat foods with polyphenols in, actually the negative effects of UV, of sunburn, of things like that, which we know the negative effects those can have, things like skin cancer, melanoma, those also go down in people who are having lots of polyphenols in their diet.
So I think cocoa butter, if rubbed on the skin, is actually anti-sun. You know, it's an actual protective. But Ed, you're right to focus on the stomach as the key benefit for polyphenols, because this is the food that the gut loves the most. This is, I think it's a prebiotic. And it loves to munch, and it creates the diversity that we're all told we need to create. So the stomach is the core. And now I'm going to ask you, where do 70% of your immune system reside?
I'm going to guess, as you said, it wasn't a leading question. I would guess in the gut.
In the stomach,
yeah.
Absolutely spot on. So this is why feeding the stomach with, you know, this phenomenal poly is so essential, because that's where your immune system resides, and if it's fed well, it's going to protect the rest of the body.
We've sped through that. I mean, honestly, I'm sure you'd agree when we were researching this, you sort of imagine maybe, okay, one or two things. Maybe it's good for the heart, maybe it's good for the brain. I mean, honestly, and these are not sort of random bloggers on the internet. These are scientific studies using serious data, big studies, using metadata, things like that. They are peer-reviewed. The range of positive effects polyphenols can have on the body, on the mind, it's nothing short of extraordinary. It really, really is.
So Ed, I'm glad you said that, because I have seen polyphenols extracted from cacao in a powder.
Wow.
And
it's the sort of expertise you get on this podcast. Yeah, I mean, how many people have seen that?
No, I have seen.
I certainly have not.
The individual that had this powder basically said that he's been taking it for 10 to 15 years every day, and he and his wife had not aged.
Yeah, they're 400 years old.
They're 400 years old. It's the elixir of life. Of course, I asked how much, you know, how could I get hold of this powder? And he told me that it was more expensive than gold, because obviously the process of finding it in chocolate is so expensive. But it was quite incredible. It was like watching Dorian Gray. This guy had not aged because of the amount of polyphenols he'd incorporated. And, you know, to add to that, I just want to bring out, when we talk about flavor, we're often talking about that bitter taste in chocolate. That is the polyphenols. So when Ed is whining about, you know, the bitter taste, and he's going, oh, I must have my sort of Milky Bar or whatever it is, he's missing out on those really important polyphenols.
Sure.
Now, of course, we also know from our Dutch episode that the Dutching process removed it.
It does. It really takes it out. So
and this is like a crime against chocolate. A chocolate crime. We've got two chocolate crimes that we're going to quickly just... One is the Dutching process, which removes poly from our chocolate, which is a really bad thing. Number two, and one of the reasons why as chocolatiers we have a kind of visceral reaction to white chocolate, of course, white chocolate doesn't have any... Poly's not... She's gone. She's not participating in the party in white chocolate. And this is one of the reasons why we always emphasize the 70%, 80% dark cocoa.
So yeah, we touched there on the ways that unfortunately you can't get it. You can't get it from mass manufactured milk chocolate that's gone through what's called Dutching. You can't get it from any white chocolate because it hasn't got the cacao solids in it. Let's talk about how you can get it. Shock horror, the headline act of polyphenols is chocolate, is dark chocolate. And if you're into the type of polyphenol that's most commonly found in dark chocolate is something called epicatechin, I think you pronounce it.
Yeah.
But essentially, that's the sort of the main one. But as I said, there are 80,000 polyphenols. Dark chocolate contains an awful lot of them.
It's immensely complicated. You said there are 80,000
There are
of these.
more. There are more than 80,000.
One of the problems I found in the research is that the scientists either get super complicated or they contradict themselves. It's a very difficult subject to get your head round. Yeah. And according to my analysis, there are 4 main types.
Sure.
And we're going to go through what each one of those types does in a second.
Yes.
But it's really important to understand the role of the different polyphenols.
And you talked about that and I'm sure if there are people at home who have read into this stuff before or watched videos or read articles about it, it is a bit of a head scratcher because when these things are laid out, often it is in exactly things that I just said there, where it says, okay, dark chocolate has this one, and that's got epicatechin in. Broccoli's got this one, and the reason we will say that is because those are the most commonly found types of polyphenol in those things. But the truth is that a lot of them contain a lot of them.
Correct.
So to be honest, I mean, we will go into detail in just now, but the TLDR, essentially, if you want to play it safe and make sure you're covering as many of those bases of polyphenol as you can, just have a diverse range of these foods.
Yeah, eat the rainbow.
Exactly. But chocolate's a really, really, really good one.
If, Ed, you were a winemaker, you would know this because it's in your DNA. And what you would know is that stress for your vine is super important. And I want to explain this. I mean, some of the best wines I've drunk, if you look at where they're grown, it's like the M25. It's gravel. It's hot. It's a disaster as an agricultural land.
Yeah, I mean, even in the UK, I mean, as basically global warming heats up the UK, our wine is better than it's ever been in the history of Britain.
Because the plant has been put under intense
a little extra bit of stress.
And that stress brings out the
more
polyphenols, and the polyphenols are the flavor. So, basically, the more you stress a plant within reason, the more flavor you get. And of course, that's what we're all looking for in wine and in chocolate. We're looking for that stress. We're looking for that intense polyphenol, and that's what we get in chocolate. So stress for the plant, unfortunately, is a key determinant of flavor.
Yeah.
And this is what, as we go through the journey of chocolate tasting, why we love that flavor. The second thing that, we experienced a lot, we give somebody a 70% chocolate and they go, oh, that's too bitter. And again, we go back to of course, the bitterness is the polyphenols. That's where all the goodness is. And we're going, no, we need to rewire your brain. Don't kick off about the bitter.
Yeah.
Let's try and categorize it. And as I say, I think the science is extremely complicated. So we're going to get this wrong. But I thought we would go...
Don't lead with that.
But I thought we'd start trying to go into the different types of polyphenols in our bonfire analogy and make it very simple. Okay, so Ed, you're again at a bonfire. You're yourself.
Sure.
Okay, and the reason you're at a bonfire is because when we talk about this oxidative stress or inflammation or any of it, your body is basically burning stuff.
Sure.
And we discovered that it's glucose. So at that party, you have bouncers that we've already discussed. And those bouncers mark your wrist with a tag saying, this guy's trouble, sort him out, etc. And we know that Granny is sitting right next to the fire.
Granny being the mitochondria.
The mitochondria is sitting very, very close to the fire. So we've got to be super protective of Granny. Now, the polyphenols in this story are the celebrities. They are the ones that basically run the entire event. And we're going to explain exactly how that works. But essentially, the serotonin and dopamine in chocolate are the fireworks. Okay, that's what we've come to see. But the people organizing the fireworks and keeping Granny safe and keeping, Ed, you from falling in the fire and drinking yourself stupid are the polyphenols. They are the controllers of our party. And I want to kind of just explain what each of the characters do. And we'll start, I think, with the Flavanols. The Flavanols are the fire control. So they're going, Grandma, you're a little too close to the fire. We're going to move you back. While everybody else is having a rave and kind of, a little bit unsure. And you're right, the epicatechin is one of the...
Exactly, epicatechin is type of flavanol,
yeah, you can think of it, there's a famous picture of this balls in baseball, and it's shot at a reporter.
Yeah.
And a guy puts his hand out and catches that ball. That is an epicatechin.
That's an epicatechin. Yeah, and it is, Andrew's right, it is confusing, because essentially there are so many of these different things, and as you mentioned there are sort of 4 types of them, and one of those is flavanol, but then epicatechin is a type of flavanol, and then you have epicatechin B2, which is about how the bonds are formed. But yeah, essentially, flavonoids are very, very, very good. They're a very useful one in sort of maintaining cells, all that sort of thing. And those are, I guess, they make up the majority of polyphenols in chocolate.
And that's really what we talk about. We talk about the flavonoids in chocolate. And, most people don't understand what they're saying when they say that. And really, what we're talking about, again, is fire control. It's making sure the mitochondria actually decouple, have a bit of a break. I mean, it's a little bit like, when the party's over and the embers are down and you've got that lovely glow, that is when the flavanols have come in. And so Granny's totally safe. Everybody can relax. The immune system can relax. Everybody's chilled. And you've got that wonderful glow from the embers. That are the flavanols. So the second one are, let's call it the phenolic acids. Okay? So this is a second category. And what we'd like to use this analogy is they're the guys cleaning the air. Granny's breathing in the smoke. We're saying, wow, you're way too close. And these are guys that, basically act as air filters and clean up some of the damaged molecules and keep, the oxidative stress, i.e. the burning stress, down.
And that's particularly good for your brain. Obviously, if you're someone that is thinking a lot, stressing out a lot, working hard, which I'm sure we basically all are, essentially, to do all those things, your brain needs lots and lots of oxygen, which means you end up with lots of oxidized cells and things.
Bits. Rust.
Exactly. Pretty much, yeah. Stuff that you don't really want there, and stuff that if left there is going to cause problems.
I mean, if you don't get them, Ed, you're going to turn up like the bogman.
And that's why, exactly. That's why you want things like antioxidants, super, super, super important in, I talked about at the start, not just sort of cognitive ability, things like problem solving, that sort of stuff, but also cognitive repair, especially if you're getting older. Stuff like, okay, can my brain cells look after themselves in a good way? And that's super important.
Now we're going to do the third category, the Stilbenes, or the, and I said it's complicated, so hang with us. Ed, I imagine you're at Reading Festival.
Okay.
Okay. And I went there to pick up one of my kids, and they were full on having a party. The music was going. There were guys climbing the tower with beer, and we all worried that they were going to fall over and have an absolute, this thing was ready to burn.
Fun.
The next day, everybody was hungover. Everybody was in a state of sort of, comatose. and I had to walk through that field. And I'm telling you, it was like a foot deep in plastic bottles and rubbish. You could not find a single bit of grass. And this went, it was like a scene in Wall-E. It was just rubbish as far as the eye could see, a foot deep. And I just basically walked over plastic bottles. This is where the polyphenols come in. Poly comes in with Stilbenes and cleans up the mess.
Yeah.
So this is your party cleaner at the end of the event coming in and sorting it out. And we all want that and need that. And that's a really important function of our polyphenols. And now the final category we've got, and as you say, there are 80,000 of these. I'm not going to go through 80,000. We're just going through the four main ones. Are the weirdly, they're all strange names, the Lignans.
They all sound like, I was getting confused when we've done Aztec research, when we've done scientific research, because they all sound like the names of some sort of Aztec emperor.
Yeah.
Like Epicatechin could easily be the sort of, I don't know, some Maya king.
Exactly,
or
exactly. So the Lignans are the final ones. And the Lignans are the kind of hormonal regulator. So it looks at the party, you're full of testosterone, you're climbing up that, up the rigging of the music festival, you're drinking beer and you're shouting at everybody and saying you want to have a fight.
Sounds about right. Yeah.
Okay, so the Lignans come in and says, calm the hell down, you're going to injure yourself and you're going to hurt everybody else. And that is the polyphenols coming in and basically, a bit like sort of, a celebrity party organizer, your trouble, out you go, we're going to calm the situation down, we're going to have a wonderful concert. So those are the four main categories.
And in terms of the analogy that you gave there, in terms of what that means for the body, that's doing things like bringing down insulin levels, that's doing things like...
That's the testosterone, the estrogen, your mood, your hormonal balance, something that we should touch on a lot, which is, a lot of the sort of issues on mental health are due to hormonal balance.
Yeah, of course.
And, polyphenols through bitter have been eradicated basically in a Western diet because people kick off, they don't like the bitter.
And I think also what's really important is like process. When we talk about ultra process, one of the things that does is it breaks down the polyphenols. It means that you're not, we mentioned the Dutching process there, that's just one of many examples of processing and mixing ingredients in ways that will actually just either take these things out of the food or make it very hard for the body to absorb them. Now, I think it's really important now we touch on how people listening at home, people watching at home, can get these things into their bodies. What are the food, drink, etc. that mean, we've spoken about what they do, now how on earth do we go about getting them? And yeah, we've touched on it a lot already in this episode. The first one, one of the best foods to get a huge range of polyphenols into your body, including things like epicatechin, including those flavonoids, but also a really, really wide range. One of them is chocolate, 70 to 90% chocolate. Now, milk chocolate does contain it. If it's good quality milk chocolate, you are going to get some, but things like glucose or lactose from the milk actually they bind with them and make it much harder for the body to absorb. So if you really, really want high polyphenol content chocolate, you want to be going 70%. Ideally, you want to be going 90%.
Yeah, and I think this is where, the research is going to drive the direction of our chocolate tasting and kind of chocolate creation, because we're very interested in superfoods. We're very interested in maximizing the polyphenols in our chocolate. And, you can do that in quite a nice way by chocolate with walnuts, which are super high.
Absolutely right.
And with coffee.
Yeah.
And then you're hitting the Flavanols, the Lignans, and the phenolic acids. So it's
right.
kind of, you want a perfect combination of polyphenols.
Honestly, I have a list in my notes that essentially goes through how much kind of the percentage of polyphenols in different foods. Chocolate is the second highest, but all of these things are good. You mentioned a few there. Walnuts, brilliant source of polyphenols. Coffee, brilliant source of polyphenols. Red grapes, and therefore red wine, a brilliant source of polyphenols.
And that's resveratrol, which has become quite a celebrity in its own
exactly.
right. But you can get that effect without the alcohol.
That's true. It's de-alcoholizing red wine does not remove polyphenols.
Yeah.
But obviously, it does also go without saying that there are studies, so like a glass of red wine actually is not a bad thing. If you're having 40 glasses of red wine a week, probably the negative effects of the alcohol are going to outweigh the positives of the polyphenol. Just to keep going through the list, Andrew mentioned correctly at the start, eating the rainbow. So if you're in that fruit and veg aisle, yeah, you want to be getting green veg, of course you do, but things in sort of dark red colours. I mentioned red grapes, but things like dark red cabbage, broccoli, all of these sorts of foods.
Yeah, you're trying to really recreate that autumnal colour season in Boston or a beautiful beech wood with all those colours.
Blueberries, blackberries, elderberries, apples with the skin on. The skin is where a lot of these things are. Because remember about what they're doing, they're protecting these fruits, they're protecting these plants from insects, from UV rays, from all sorts of things. So it's likely they're going to be on the outside.
So when we're looking at polyphenols, let's just wrap up this section because it is a big list and we will add it. But I just want to, olive oil is kind of, seen as one of the elixirs of life and is part of the Mediterranean diet. And it's kind of almost arguably the Mediterranean diet in itself.
Yeah. It
could be the key. But if we look at the polyphenols per 100 grams in extra virgin olive oil, and when you drink olive oil and you get that kind of cough, it's so powerful that you actually almost cough all the pepper. Those are the polyphenols that create that cough. In chocolate, cocoa powder or dark chocolate, it could be 3,500 per 100 grams.
Yeah, 3,500 milligrams of polyphenols per 100 grams, which is a remarkable amount.
And extra virgin olive oil is only 55.
Yes.
And that gives you a sense of the scale we're talking. Chocolate is absolutely the king.
Absolutely, it is. And those numbers are a really useful benchmark of thinking about this sort of thing. There is, I'd say, added context to those numbers. It's which polyphenols are there. We're definitely not saying don't have olive oil, but it just goes to show quite how much of this stuff is in chocolate. The last food I want to mention before we move on, which is the only one that I could find which had a higher polyphenol rate per kind of 100 grams than chocolate. And to be fair, it's higher by a factor of about 100.
Yeah.
It's bizarrely, and Andrew and I both found this, cloves
are the king.
Now, obviously, a bar of dark chocolate is bitter. The equivalent amount of cloves would be a very difficult thing to eat that much of. So,
and of course, cloves are in speculous.
Yes.
So we've got speculous, the mixed spice in our chocolate, and that's a beautiful combination.
So you're going to be eating a lot less cloves than you are chocolate. But it's interesting. I was thinking a little bit of dark chocolate and a glass of mulled wine sounds like a lovely evening in. But actually, you're getting so many different polyphenols there.
Yeah, it is interesting that the drink, the hot chocolate, the black tea, green tea, coffee. And,
absolutely right.
With a bit of cloves mixed
in
for
these bitter foods. So, but anyway, that's sort of, and I'm sure there's lots of lists on the internet and things if you want to get a full list of how to get these things. One last thing I'll add is that what's really important is not just thinking about am I getting those foods, but am I also, we touched upon last week, am I eating fats as part of my diet? Because fats are super important in absorbing these things. Now, obviously, olive oil, chocolate in the form of cocoa butter has those fats there.
Correct.
But if you're eating, I don't know, a big bowl of blackberries, you're not going to get the same polyphenols absorbed by your body if you're not also eating healthy fats with that. So avocado or olive oil or things like cocoa butter.
Yes, and you're absolutely right to focus on the absorption because you can eat these things but not absorb them. You'll absorb something like 10% of these polyphenols. And fat helps that, or pepper helps that absorption. And I guess, I'll end with a statement saying that, food is your medicine, or medicine will become your food. And this is the key thing, and this is where polyphenols come in. They basically keep you off the meds.
They are incredible, and they're so diverse in what they do, and I think not enough people know about them. I certainly didn't know enough about them until I started researching them over the past few weeks. So yeah, hopefully those listening and those watching at home, hopefully you guys have not only learned a bit, but are actually starting to think about, oh, am I getting enough of these things? Not only am I eating the right foods, but am I eating them with, we just mentioned at the end there, fats as part of a balanced diet.
And we're coming up to, you know, the point at which I think we've got to start thinking about putting Ed through a chocolate diet.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, the health benefits of dark chocolate, they're just adding up and adding up and adding up.
Yeah.
I need to start eating more and more of this stuff.
You know, on the next episode, we're going to run through the components of the best diet we can generate based on science. You know, it's not going to be on an opinion. It's going to be, and can I just point out, scientists contradict each other.
True.
Scientists also explain things in terms that are so complicated that nobody can understand them. Thirdly, oftentimes they use rats and mice in little cages.
Yes.
And I don't think that's entirely appropriate. So our rat and mice is going to be Ed.
It is
next week. I'm warning you, he is going to be maybe not the rat or the mice, but the guinea pig. The guinea pig.
The chocolate guinea pig.
We'll get you a wheel as well.
I was reading a lot about all these mice that were given chocolate, and I was thinking probably of all the things that could be given to a sort of poor lab rat in some science lab.
Yeah.
Actually, a little bit of dark chocolate
is not a
probably
bad
not the worst thing. Anyway, on that note, yes, I'm looking forward to becoming lab rat next week. But yeah, I really hope people have learned something at home. Hopefully, you'll now be seeking out your polyphenols in the supermarket and making sure that you're topping up on them. I certainly will. I've been Ed. Thank you very much.
And thank you from Andrew and Phenomenal Polly.
Yes.
Bye-bye.